everybody, and welcome back to a slightly different kind of video today. So, for anyone who doesn't know, September is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, and when I was 12 years old, I had a bone marrow transplant. So, this is something that's very kind of close to me and very important to me. And I've spent the last week or two knowing that I wanted to make some kind of video about this, but not really knowing where to start or what I would talk about or how I wanted to approach the subject. And then a couple days ago, the news of Chadwick Boseman's passing came to light. That one hit me really, really hard. Obviously, there's all of the, front and center reasons that he was such a phenomenal artist and a well-spoken, well-intentioned individual. He was playing one of the most groundbreaking, amazing superheroes and brought him to life with such poise and grace. And that's not even mentioning all of the other amazing work he's done. So that's obviously, terribly sad in and of itself. But then when I heard kind of the reason and the backstory and just how long he had been dealing with all of these terribly difficult medical things, it hit me really hard in a really weird way that I don't really think any celebrity death has ever really done before. And kind of gave me the idea of what I wanted to talk about today. So I want to make it really clear that obviously, I didn't know Chadwick Boseman. I have no idea, and I don't presume to have any idea as to why he made the decisions that he made about, what information he let come to light and the information that he didn't. And I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to pretend like I have any idea why he made the decisions that he made. I respect them, and I respect him, and we're just going to leave it at that. This is not a video about Chadwick Boseman. But what it is about, and why I kind of chose to talk about this in the wake of his passing, is kind of the idea of how cancer patients are portrayed in the media, what the vast majority of the population sees if they don't actually go through it themselves or know someone and is close to someone that goes through it. It's something that's always bothered me. No, bothered isn't the right word. It's always pissed me off, the kind of representation you see in the media for cancer patients, especially childhood cancer patients. Because, now, to be fair, everybody is different. Everybody deals with things differently. My experience is very different from pretty much everybody else's experience. There are, without a doubt, people that go through cancer and they embrace that whole warrior narrative, and it helps them and it's important to them, and they do keep up the positivity, and the hope is important and all of that, and no shade. That is wonderful, and if it works, great, more power to you. Whatever you have to do to get through this, it is what you should do. What my issue comes with is the fact that that is pretty much the only narrative you ever see. You don't see the people that are pissed off at the world. You don't see the people that are so beaten down and they lose so much that hope isn't really a thing that you go to anymore. You don't see the terrible, terrible days in the media. You don't you don't see it. You see the inspirational stories, but you don't see the ugly truth reality of what you have to go through when you're so sick like that, when you have to have chemo, or I didn't have radiation, but I knew people that did do radiation, and that takes a huge, huge toll on you. And a bone marrow transplant is insane. The things that you have to go through and the effects that it has on you long term, short term, immediately, years down the line, it's such a huge thing. And I feel like you don't ever really get to see that. You don't ever get to see the implications. You don't ever get to see the. And again, especially in regards to kids, because I was a kid when I went through it. And all you ever saw were these bright little rays of hope that never gave up fighting. And it's the narrative that you're given. And then when you are that little kid and everything sucks so much, and you don't really have that positive outlook on life, it kind of creates this weird kind of internal struggle, because you feel like you're wrong for not being the way that it seems like you should be. And that's not to say that like everyone always has either the best days and they're a warrior and they fight and they're great all the time, or they're miserable and they have given up and curled up in a ball and like that's their life. It's not like it's one or the other. You have both. Even the people that do hold on to that kind of warrior narrative and that hope for the future have bad days. Like when you have cancer, you have bad days. It doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what your outlook is, it doesn't matter kind of the approach that you take on it. You're gonna have days that just kind of knock you on your butt, no matter what you do. But I just think it's interesting, and you can see it in the media across all different kinds of illnesses. You see this idea that people are either, they completely become their illness and they become debilitated by it, or they like fight against it. And you always get those two opposing forces, and it's all you ever see. And it's just not accurate. It's just not. And I think it's sad. I think it's sad that you don't ever really get to see people that are sick or people that have disabilities kind of really portrayed as full human beings in the media. You don't get to see it. Like for me personally, I started getting really, really, really sick when I was probably around 11 years old. I got diagnosed when I was 12, and right before, a couple weeks before my 13th birthday, I had my bone marrow transplant. And then I was probably 17 years old, give or take, before I ever got to a place in which I felt like I could function as a human being in the way that most other people did. I didn't really get to go back to school for real until my senior year. I got sick in middle school, and it was my senior year of high school before I even was kind of able to actually go back to school and function. It's such a long process, And I don't think people always see that. And again, it's not necessarily always a long process for everyone, but for some people, it takes years. And with everyone, it takes still a lot of time to get back to a place of being able to function. And even then, you never really get back to functioning the way you did before. You're never going to be like 100%. Almost everyone has some kind of effects that carry on with them through the rest of their life. And like that's a reality. And a lot of people don't necessarily know that because you don't see it. People don't I don't think people realize how much media really does influence everything you think and everything you see. Because if you're not exposed to someone that is sick and has cancer, or someone that's disabled, or someone that's mentally ill, if you're not exposed to those people in real life, the only thing you have to go off of is the media you've consumed. And there is such a terrible, terrible issue with the way that media portrays those kind of things. And it's a hard thing to tackle in media. It really is, because everyone's experiences are so different that you're never going to be able to nail everyone's experience on the head with one person. But I guess that's kind of my point, is that since you can't nail every single person with one character, like in my mind, that means that you need to have more than like one character. Like not every single cancer survivor's experience is the same. So why do we only have the one type of movie where you see this inspirational person that fights against all the odds and comes out on the other side? It's all you ever see, and it bothers me. It really does. And of course, again, there are exceptions. There are, every once in a while you get a diamond in the rough and a really good portrayal of something. But so often when Hollywood decides they want to depict something that is outside of the norm, they fall into the stereotypes. And they just take the cookie cutter, this happens and this is how they react and this is how it ends and it's great narrative, and they just shove it in, and then they're like, representation. Not really how that works. Like, legitimately, for once, I want to sit down and I want to watch a movie or a show or whatever that has a character in it that is sick as hell and pissed off about it. Like, I want to see people that are people and handle things maybe not with perfect grace. Like, we see narratives all the time of people in relationships that handle things not great, or with life decisions that handle things not great, but they can still be full human beings, and there can be a turnaround, and there can be a plot, and there can be a story around it. So why can't we have a movie of somebody that's sick that handles it terribly and like is pissed off, but there are like interesting aspects and nuanced conversations, and it could be funny. Like, legit, I have the most dry, like, nihilistic humor sometimes, and that shit's funny. Like, you could make a really good movie about that. And I think people would like it. I think it would hit home for people that have been sick, but also people that haven't. And I think it would just give a voice to people that don't have one. Like that's what it comes back to. If I had known when I was younger that it was okay to not be okay with the fact that my entire life had kind of imploded and been put on pause, and that the entire future that I had kind of planned out in my head was just not gonna be possible anymore. If I had known, and it sounds crazy to say out loud that, like, I didn't know that it was okay to not be okay with that. Like, I felt guilty and I felt bad about not being okay with the fact that I was possibly going to die. But that's what I had. That was the frame of reference that I had from the media and everything around me, was that sick people, especially sick kids, were supposed to approach all of this in a certain way. And the fact that I didn't feel that way made everything so much worse. I legitimately think I would have been so much less miserable if I had just given myself permission to be kind of miserable and not feel bad about it. And I think that's where a lot of people don't understand with media. Of people are like, it's just a TV show, or it's just a movie, or it's just a book, or whatever it might be. But it's not. Media is the way that you see yourself reflected. And if the way that you see yourself reflected in the mass population is not the way that you feel, there's a disconnect there, and it causes issues. It causes so many issues. And also, like, side note, I don't really know where this whole idea that, like, kids and teenagers handle cancer with grace comes from. Because, in my experience, children and teenagers don't tend to handle much with grace. That's kind of the point of growing up, is like you learn to handle terrible things with grace, but no one's like ingrained with the ability to do that. Like, have you ever stepped foot in a high school? Like, no one's handling anything within those walls with grace. Or a middle school? Like, no one is handling puberty with grace. So why do we expect them to handle serious, potentially life-threatening illnesses or disabilities with grace? That's never made sense to me. Why do we expect children and teenagers to, like... I don't know. It's never made sense to me. Maybe it's just me. So, yeah, I guess the moral of this rant is the idea that media representation is important. Across the board. In every way. Whether you think that that's a good thing or a bad thing, it's true. And it's always been true. Like, people think that this is some kind of new concept. That, like, with the internet, like, people put way too much importance on social media and, you know, the media and everything, that there's too much focus on it. But it's the way that things have always been. Like, before the internet, it was TV. Before TV, it was radio, and it was newspapers, and it was literature, and it was music, and all of these things have always existed in some form or another, and they've always been important. It's been important to people, it's been important to shaping society. That has never changed, and it never will. And that's actually one of my, like, favorite things about social media. And you can say a lot. You can say a lot about social media. I can say a lot about social media. I don't always love it. But one of the things that I do love about things like YouTube or Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or whatever, it does give a voice to people that aren't represented as much or as well in traditional media. You can find people on YouTube talking about illnesses and disability and mental health and race and gender and sexuality and anything and everything that traditional media tends to ignore or push to the side or portray, but only in that one kind of certain way that everyone's agreed is like okay to do. So it's a catch-22, right? Like it's a whole thing. There are good, there are bad. I think there are plenty of places and plenty of room for improvement. And I think it's just important to remember that people are different and people respond to things differently. And just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not real or it's not valid, which are all lessons that I wish I had learned about 12, 13 years ago. It would have been nice. And to wrap it back around to Chadwick Boseman for just 1 second, one of the really, really good talking points that I have seen pop up around this is the idea that you never know what someone is dealing with and what someone is going through if they don't want you to. There could be so much going on in somebody's life, and you'd never know. So just try to remember that. Keep it in your mind, especially right now. With everything that's going on in the world, everyone is under a lot of stress. So just try your best to treat everyone with respect and kindness right now, because it's the only way we're going to get through all this. And rest in peace to Chadwick Boseman, Black Panther, a phenomenal actor and artist, and an incredibly kind and well-spoken individual. He will be extremely missed. So, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.